Hello guys, in this tutorial I'm going to walk you through the steps that you need to know to create a map like this using ArcGIS Pro. I'll be providing you with the data that I'm using for this tutorial, which you can find in the description below, so that you'll be able to follow along and see whether you can create your own map like this with the help of the tools provided by ArcGIS Pro. So first of all, let's have a look at the data that we're going to work with today, and we'll try to import that data into our ArcGIS Pro workspace. So the data is generally stored in a folder like this, and it can be quite convenient sometimes to just drag the files and drop it onto your ArcGIS Pro workspace. But I think a much better habit to develop would be to start using catalog, especially for your data management tasks, as well as for viewing data, and to decide which specific data you're going to import into your project. And you can switch this on quite simply by heading over to View and select this catalog pane, and that should bring this one up. And in my case, I have already linked the folder in which I have kept my data. But in your case, if you haven't really linked that folder, you can right click over here and make that folder connection prior to importing the data. And I have kept my data under this folder, and I'm just going to drag them and drop it over here. So when you view your data through this catalog pane, you won't really see all the other files that are associated with shapefiles, such as the projection file, the database file, things like that. You will only see the most relevant file, which is the .shp file if it's a shape file, if you're trying to import that onto a GIS software. So I'm just going to drag this and drop it onto my workspace. So you can see, as the name says, it's a shapefile of rivers, and I do have another shapefile of subcatchments as well. And in addition to that, I do have another raster called elevation data. So I'm just going to drag that and drop it over here as well. So you can see that I currently have 3 different files. And as you saw at the beginning of this video, what I'm trying to do today in this tutorial is prepare a map to show this set of subcatchments, the river lines, and some important data that are associated with it. So I think the very first thing that I would have to do is to get rid of the information that I don't really need. And that includes clipping out some parts of this river shapefile that I'm not really going to use for this tutorial. And at the same time, I won't really be using these external parts of the elevation data raster as well. So if I deactivate for the time being, you can see that I'm only interested in this part, which really overlaps with the extent of my subcatchments. So to begin with, I'm going to head over to Analysis and perform a simple clip operation, which you can do by just searching for the tool over here. And first of all, I'm going to clip my rivers based on my subcatchments. And the output feature class, I'm just going to name this as reverse clip. And after that, you can go ahead and run the command. And as you saw, we have a new file right over here. So I can go ahead and get rid of this old file. And now you can see all the rivers are clipped according to the boundary or according to the extent of my subcatchments. And I'm going to do a similar operation for the underlying raster as well. So we can back up one step, and over here we can see that there's a tool called Clip Raster. So open that up, and you can drag your raster dataset and drop it right over here. And we're going to specify the output extent based on the subcatchments shapefile. And since we're looking to cut this raster along the boundary of this subcatchment, what we can do is we can just make sure that we put a tick right over here. And I think I'm going to retain this file name, which gets specified by default. After that, we can run the command as well. Yeah, now if I go ahead and deactivate this original raster, you can see that the raster actually got clipped according to the specified boundary. So that's how it looks. And now I think we can just go ahead and do the styling that we're intending to do. For example, the rivers, we can decide to represent them by this kind of a blue line. And the subcatchments, I think what we can do is we can basically get rid of the fill color. And we can just maintain the outline, maybe a black outline of about 1.5. Yeah, when you do that, you really start seeing the rust that's lying underneath. And what we can do is we can go ahead and adjust the symbology of this raster as well. Right click over here, go to Symbology and select an appropriate color scheme. I think I probably might go with something like this, where it really highlights those highs and lows. Well, this is if you would like to maintain a stretch type color representation. But if you would like to sort of categorize the elevation for a specified number of classes, what you can do is you can select classify over here. And when you do that, you can see that it automatically broke the elevation into 5 different classes. And over here, you can actually make some changes to make sure that the variations in elevations are properly displayed according to your preferred style. Now, one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to maybe increase the number of classes from 5 to about 8. And at the same time, I think I'm going to go with another color scheme. I probably might stick with the same color scheme that I had previously, or I might just play around and see which one actually fits much better. Yeah, I think I'm starting to think that this would be actually a good representation for elevation, just that I would like to flip how these colors look when it comes to showing the highest values and the lowest values. So I would like to have the lowest value displayed in blue color and the highest in sort of a brown color, which means I would need to flip this entire color scheme. And you can do that simply by right-clicking over here, and you can select reverse ordering. And when you do that, you can see that the numbers didn't actually change, but the way how this color scheme gets applied to different numbers does actually change. When it comes to deciding the ranges, you can see the same table that you have over here on your left-hand side as well. So when you prepare the real map, this is how the numbers are going to display. And if you ask me, I definitely would make some changes, especially with regard to showing these decimal points, because I think it's really distracting to have 3 decimal points and it's not really adding any value. So I'm going to get rid of the decimal points. That's one of the things that I'm doing. And at the same time, you have a number of different methods right over here, which provides full control when it comes to how you intend to specify the value ranges for each of these different classes. So for example, if you go with equal interval, you can see that for each color patch, the elevation difference that gets assigned is actually going to be the same across all the different color patches. But if you go with another method like, let's say, quantile, you can see that it's not really equal. For example, over here, it's varying from about 1,500 to about 2,000, which is an interval of about, let's say, 500 meters. But if you look at this color patch right over here, the difference is only varying from 2,500 to about 2,600. Close to a 90 or 100 meters difference. So there's no right or wrong answer, and you have the full control of actually making changes according to your preference. For example, if you feel like you would want to make some changes manually, you could just double click over here and adjust these values according to your preference as well. For example, let's say if I want to add 2,650 over here, and the remaining values will also get adjusted accordingly. But in this case, I'm just going to play around and see which one looks the best. Equal interval probably might be the one that I'm going to go with. And as you can see, when you do make such changes, the ordering of the colors also changes accordingly. So I will have to reverse the ordering again to have the blue colors sort of match the lowest elevations. And at the same time, I'm also going to change the symbology of my reverse shapefile a bit as well to make it stand out a bit more. What if I go with a really dark color like this and probably bump up the line width to be about 2? Yeah, I think that looks all right. All right, now let's talk about some of the labels that I would like to display on this map. Now, I would definitely like to display the name of each of these different watersheds on this map, because later on, as you saw at the beginning of this video, I'll be adding some details pertaining to each of these different catchments. Well, I'll be adding a table where it lists out the area values of each of these different catchments. So in that case, it would be quite handy to have the name of each catchment displayed on the map as well. So if you head over to the subcatchments shapefile, and if you open up the attributes table, you can see that we do have some information right over here. So we have the catchment name and we have the area. Now the area is actually given in hectares in here. And when we go on to create the map, we can actually specify those information such as the units and things like that. So to display these names on the map, what I can do is I can head over to labeling, make sure that you have selected the correct layer right over here, and head over to labeling. And from here, I'm going to select, I would like to display the catchment name. And when you do that, it'll start pulling values that are specified right over here. And when you click on label, yeah, as you can see, it'll start displaying those values. Now in the default setting, you can see that the name is barely readable in some cases. So you definitely want to make some changes on there as well. So to make the changes to labeling, what you can do is, well, to start off, I'm going to change the font. And I'm going to set the font to be Arial. And with regard to the font size, yeah, I think it would be quite alright to have the font size somewhere around 11 or 12. And if you would like to make further changes, what you can do is you can actually click on this arrow right over here. And that'll open up a whole new panel where you'd have much more control over how you would like to display these labels. Now you can see that you can actually change things like the text color, the outline color, things like that. So for example, if you'd like to go with maybe a red color, you'd have to click apply for the changes to get reflected. And again, you can see that it might not really be a good choice in this specific case, especially when there's a lot going on in the background. It would actually help to have a halo around this label. So what you can do is you can head over to this Halo tab, expand that, and well, I'm just going to go with having a white color halo and click apply. And now you can start seeing that it really gives that look where you'd be able to distinguish this name from its background. And now if you want, you can even go ahead and maybe make the text bold, and you can control the size of the halo as well. Let's see how it looks if I were to increase this to 2. Yeah, I think that's quite alright. And before we head over to create the map layout, I'm going to add 2 more datasets onto our workspace as well. The point locations of the hydrological stations as well as the locations of the meteorological stations. So I would like to show the locations of those in the map that we are creating. So as you can see right over here, I have copied those 2 datasets into my working folder as well. We have the hydrological stations.shp file and the meteorological stations.shp file. So let's bring this in, and without changing the symbology, the locations might not really be apparent to you guys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first change the symbology or the appearance of these hydrological stations by heading over to Symbology, and we can click on this button to make changes to those points. And I'm going to go with a color like, well, it actually might be a bit challenging to find a color that would stand out from all that's going on in our map currently. I think red would be a good choice, maybe with an increased size like this. Yeah, I think I have made the outline width to be a bit too much. So now you can quite clearly see where the hydrological stations are located at. And at the same time, I would like to show the locations of the meteorological stations as well. And let me head over to that layer and change the symbology as well. And I'm going to head over to the gallery and try to pick something like a triangle. We can go with a different shape. We don't always have to go with a circle. So I'm going to pick this triangle. And now let's go ahead and make individual changes to that. So definitely the color, I'm going to change it to be, let's see how a color like this would look. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with this kind of a setting where you would be able to quite clearly see that these stations are located right along the river. So it would be good to pick a contrasting color to the color of the river. All right, so now we have more or less gotten everything that we would like to display on our map. So the next thing would be to start creating the map layout, and to do that we can head over to Insert and go to New Layout and select whether you want to have a page in landscape or in portrait form and the specific size. As you can see, there's actually a lot of choices to choose from when it comes to different standards of page orientations and sizes. But that's not to say that once you make your pick, you're stuck with it and you don't really have any freedom to make changes. You can always go back and make changes to the size and the orientation of the page that you're working on, even while you're working on the map itself. But as a starting point, I'm going to go with this ISO landscape. And you will notice that in addition to this map tab that we had previously, now a new layout's appeared, and it's going to start to have its own table of contents as well, similar to what we had over here on the map. And right over here, if you happen to just right click and go to properties, you would be able to see the selection that you made with regard to the page size and the page type. It's A4 landscape, and if you head over to general, you could actually give a name for your layout as well. So I'm just going to name this as watershed map, keep it short, and click OK, so that you can see that the name of the layout actually just got changed. And next, what we're trying to do is we're basically trying to bring over whatever we have over here into our map layout. So to do that, you can open up this map frame and select this map. And after that, you can basically start drawing a rectangle just like this. And that should bring, well, some information that you have over here on map over to your map layout. Now, I know it's not perfect, but this is a good starting point. And from here onwards, we can do the tweaks. And if you want to just move things around, you have the capability of doing that. And the reason why I didn't really draw this covering the entire page is because I have a plan to include some other information right around this area. So that was the reason. Otherwise, I would have just drawn a rectangle covering the entire page, just like this. And there's nothing stopping you from doing that. If you feel like you would like to stretch across the entire page and have stuff display on the map, yeah, you could do that as well. It's completely a personal choice. So I'm just going to resize my map window just like this. And now what you can immediately notice is that, yes, you do have the map window, but we would like to sort of center our catchment right around this mid area of our map window. And right now, as you can see, you cannot really move the map that's inside the map window, but instead what happens is that the entire window gets moved around. So if you want to make changes to how things display inside this map window, you'd have to sort of activate this map window, and you can do that simply by right-clicking over here, and you can select activate, and that'll start to give you full control over how you would like things to display inside the map. And now I can simply drag this, and you can see that I can actually make changes to the zoom level as well. And as I'm doing that, you can see that the scales change over here. So if you would like to manually adjust the scales, you could do that as well. For example, you can see that if I set this to be about 1 to 500,000, I think that might be a bit too much. So let's make it about 550,000. Yeah, I think that's great. And once you're happy with the changes, what you can do is you can go to layout and select close activation, and that'll basically lock this view in place. And now if you happen to move this around, you can see that the map window is the thing that gets moved around, which is not much of a problem because you can always bring that back into place. And there are actually ways of locking this map window as well, but we'll get to that in a minute. So after properly centering the map, I would like to make some changes as well, because I just realized that we need to add a title to this map and a scale bar somewhere down under over here. So I would have to kind of squish this map. And if I head back to my map over here and check what kind of a coordinate reference system that I'm using natively by right-clicking and going over to properties, let's check the coordinate system, and you can see that currently I'm using WGS 1984 coordinate reference system, which is a geographic coordinate reference system. But if you would like to give this map kind of a touch of one of the common types of map like Google Maps, you can actually change this to something like WGS 1984 Web Mercator, which is a projected coordinate reference system, and you'll see that the outlook slightly changes as well, and those changes will get reflected over here on this layout too. So as you can see, we might really have to go back and activate this and position it slightly in the middle. And of course, I would have to increase this to about 600,000 or probably even more. Yeah, that looks like a good tight fit. And after that, we can go ahead and close the activation and leave some space from the sides as well. And in addition to this map view, what I'm going to do is I'm also going to create a new map by heading over to this button right over here and selecting a new map. And I'm going to right click and go to properties and name this as extend view, because because I'm going to use this map specifically to show the extent. For example, if someone were to look at my map right now, they might be able to tell a lot of things, but they might not really be able to tell which geographical region exactly we are in right now just by looking at this map. And that's where this kind of an extent view actually helps, because if we can have an extent view like this, basically add a rectangle to indicate where exactly our area is at, then that's going to be quite helpful as well, isn't it? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a second map frame, and this time I'm not going to add this map, but instead I'm going to add this extent view, and I'm going to create a separate rectangle for that. And let's make it to be somewhere over here. Maybe leave some space for this. And after that, of course, you can make changes to the view inside as well. And to do that, what we need to do is we can go ahead and activate it and probably place it to have South Africa shown like this. And after that, we can head back to layout and close activation. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to add an extent indicator. And I'm going to head over to this extent indicator and select a map frame. And right over here, you can see that it basically added an extent indicator just like this. However, I think the rectangle looks a bit too small. So I think we probably might have to zoom into the southwestern part of South Africa just a little bit more. And to do that, we have to activate it again. And when I do this, you can see that the size of the rectangle increases as well. And since our watershed is entirely located within Lesotho, I think indicating the extent in this sort of a manner would be good enough. And after that, head back to layout and select close activation. And I would like to make some changes to this extent indicator, so I can head over to this extent of the map frame and go to properties. And in properties, you can always make sure that this is actually linked to this map frame. Especially if you're having multiple map windows, you'd need to know which one to refer to. So that's set right over here by specifying the source. And in this case, since we just have this map, you can see that the correct one has been assigned automatically. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to symbol, and I'm going to change the color of this rectangle to be red, and maybe we can increase the width, the outline width as well. And as we know, it's important to include some key elements like a north arrow and a scale bar in our map as well. So to do that, we can head over to this north arrow right over here. And there's actually quite a wide selection to choose from. I'm going to go with this second option. And I'm going to place that north arrow right over here. So as you can see, now I'm actually treating this as my main map. And this is only sort of an extent indicator. So I won't be adding all of these elements here, and we can resize this north arrow just a bit. And at the same time, I could go ahead and add a scale bar as well. And there are actually a number of different scale bars to choose from. I'm going to go with this double alternating metric type scale bar. And we can basically draw a scale bar right underneath, just like this. And you can always make adjustments to the position of the scale bar as well. And if you'd like to make specific changes corresponding to the text of the scale bar, you can always right click and go to properties. And from here you can see if you would like to change the map units from kilometers to, let's say, meters, you can do that. You can do stuff like that as well. And if you would like to make specific changes to the text, it's always this tab right over here. Let's say if you want to increase or decrease the font size, you can do it like this. But I'm going to flip this back to what I had initially, which is 10, because I'm quite happy with the font size. And if you think that the scale bar should be on the map itself, well, you could do that as well, simply by bringing it over onto the map like this. And in that case, you probably might have to, well, decrease the extent of the scale bar and place it somewhere around here. And as you can see, when we make adjustments to the size, the scale automatically changes as well. Or if you think that it's a bit too congested right over here, what we could do is we could even bring it over onto this side, just like this. And I told you guys at the beginning that I would like to display some data about my catchments. So if I head back to my map And if I open up the attributes table of my subcatchments shapefile, you can see that I have some information that I would like to display. For example, the catchment name and the area. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, well, right click and go to fields. Over here, you can see that it's basically the 5 different fields that we had. And the only thing that I'm going to change is basically the alias. So that would be the name that's going to get displayed on my map, while this is the original field name. So I'm just going to make this a bit more descriptive by saying this is catchment name, and I'm going to add the units over here and say that it's the area is given in hectares. And after that, let's save those changes. And what we can do is we can head over to our watershed map layout view, and I'm going to select subcatchments, and right over here you can see that we have the possibility of adding a table. So let's go with this second option, and all I have to do is just draw my table like this. And as you can see, it managed to grab the information that we had previously in the attributes table into a table like this. So if I expand this, you can see that we're able to basically see everything without any issue. I probably might have to resize things around a bit to make sure that everything fits in properly. And I definitely do not want to have this ID column right over here. So just having the catchment name and the area would be sufficient enough. And you can make changes to what gets displayed or what items gets displayed. So let's say if I turn off this ID field, you can see that it just basically disappears. And well, I could basically do the same for the other columns as well. So let's say if I want to hide the catchment names, then it's going to be a bit meaningless. So I'm just going to turn this back on, and I can always resize this. And well, from here onwards, it's just up to you to make changes on how you would like to display this. Now, I told you guys definitely that I don't really want to display things like the decimal points on this table. So I think what I can do is I can head back to my original map and go to attributes table. And right over here, well, I'm going to open up this fields window that we had previously. And I'm going to come to this area row and click right over here on numeric and decrease the number of decimal points to be 0. And we can make those, and we can save those changes. So now you can see that all the decimal points are gone, and you would expect those changes to be reflected right over here as well when you head back to the layout view. And I would like to make a couple more small changes. I would like to center everything, and to do that we can head over to text symbol and go to position, and you can see that the indentation is like, and you can see that now we have sort of a left alignment. I would like to center everything. Click on apply. And if you would like to make specific changes to the font size as well, you could do that too. And I think the font size is quite all right. Just that I might have to change the font type to be Arial, and click apply. And at the same time, I think that maybe the font size of the headings could be made a bit lower. So to do that, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to pick the heading text, which I think should refer to this one, and knock this down to about 12. And let's see whether that gets properly applied or not. Yes, it gets applied as we intended. Well, I think that basically messes with how stretched this table is. So I'm just going to go back and retain that to be 14 again. I'm not going to make any changes to that. And now it's the time to add a legend, and I'm going to make some space to add the legend by shrinking this just a little bit. So this would be the area that I would be adding my legend. And to add a legend, all you have to do is just head over to legend right over here, and I'm going to go with this first option. And after that, you can just go ahead and draw a legend like this. And always make sure that the legend is tied to the proper map frame. So in this case, I'm not going to tie it to map frame 1, but I'm going to tie it to map frame, the main map frame, which is this one. So as soon as I made that selection, you can see that elements started to appear, but in map frame 1, we didn't basically have anything. So just make sure that you are picking the correct map frame. And in terms of the things that I would like to display, well, you can see that there's actually quite a lot going on, but I definitely wouldn't want to display everything over here. And you have direct control over the different elements that you would like to show in your legend. So if you deactivate certain elements, they won't be shown in the legend. For example, let's say if you want to get rid of the subcatchments, as you saw, it basically disappears. And I probably would like to show the remaining items on my legend. However, as you might have imagined, I definitely want to make some changes to the way how things are spaced out. So one of the first things that I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of these elements like the meteorological stations, the hydrological stations, and the rivers for the time being from this legend. And just have my elevation data displayed just like this. And as I told you guys, I definitely want to get rid of the decimal points when it comes to showing these elevation classes. So we can head back to map, and over here under Symbology, we can head over to this advanced Symbology options. And from here under format labels, you can see that we can adjust the number of decimal points, and that's going to be 0. And that change should be reflected right over here. And in addition to that, I would like to make changes to these headings that we can see over here as well. So to make changes to this text, what we can do is we can head over to this original layer, and if you hit F2, you'd be able to change the name there itself. And that change should basically get reflected right over here on your legend. And I'm going to name this as catchment topography. And we can make changes to this value as well. Hit F2 again, and I'm going to name this elevation given in meters. And that change should be reflected right around here as well. And now I'm going to go ahead and make changes to the font style. So right click and go to properties and make sure that you select text symbol. And from here you'd have to pick which specific item you're actually referring to. So in this case, let's say if I'm referring to the layer name, let's go ahead and make some changes to the layer name. Well, the font name should be Arial, and I'm going to make it bold, and definitely make the size to be about 14 instead of 16. Yeah, so that you can see that it actually gives this really nice bold heading type of a look. And when it comes to this elevation meters, I would like to pick headings and make sure that I'm consistent with my font name, and just going to pick a narrow italic for the font style. Well, I think I could maybe increase the font size just a little bit as well. Well, I think I might also be able to maybe adjust this to be something like this and have the entire set of color patches displayed vertically like this. It all depends on how you'd like to present your creative ideas in a way that captures the attention of the reader of this map. And this way, I think I can sort of align this side of the legend totally for this catchment topography information. And right over here on the right side, I think I could add another legend, which I could simply do by, well, making a copy of this, and after that press Ctrl V, and a copy of the legend should appear, but now it's actually going to be displayed under a different title right over here on the table of contents. And this time I'm just going to activate these other items like the meteorological stations, hydrological stations, rivers, and subcatchments, and I'm just going to get rid of this catchment topography item. So I'm going to dedicate this side just for these other items. And of course, we would like to get rid of this legend heading as well. You can simply do that by unticking this box. And if you do that, you can see that we definitely need to play around with the spacing between the items. And you can adjust the spacing between the items by heading over to legend arrangement options and right over here you can adjust spacing. And if you head over to these items and increase the spacing, you can see that the space between the items increases just like this, which is exactly what I want. And I can place it sort of somewhere around here. And of course we would like to head back to the original layers and make changes to the names as well. So I'm going to name this as subcatchments. Well, you can make a slight change to the name like this, and this one should be rivers, and this item should be hydrological stations. Again, I'm putting this to be in editable mode, just the name, by hitting F2. And this one is going to be meteorological stations. And those changes would get reflected right over here on the legend as well. And I feel like I definitely would need to make some changes to the font size as well, which I can do simply by heading over to text symbol and make sure that we are selecting the labels, and let's pick Arial as the font type, and we would like to have them a bit bold and maybe increase the font size to be about 12. Apply, and that should be good enough. And finally, before I wrap up, I would like to add a heading to this map as well. So to add a heading, you can go to this graphics and texts and select text, rectangle text right over here, and you can add the heading somewhere up here. So I'm just going to name this as elevation map of subcatchments, and you can definitely see that I need to make some changes to the font style. So just select everything, head over to text symbol, and change this to be, well, Arial as well, just for consistency. And this definitely needs to be bold and maybe around 16. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, and the alignment should be centered just like this. And I'm going to make sure that this is right in the middle simply by fitting this to the ends of the page. And before I finish this up, I would like to do some final touches, maybe extend this a bit to the left side and extend this a bit as well. And if you'd like to draw a rectangle around this legend, you could do stuff like that as well by heading over to this graphics and text, and you can select polygon right over here. Well, there are a number of ways of actually doing stuff like this under the properties of a legend, but since we combined two different legends, it would be quite easy to do it in this manner. And one final thing before we wrap up this map, as you can see over here, we do have to provide attribution to the base maps that we are using. So you could decide to leave those information either on the map itself, or if you would like to have all of this attribution information maybe displayed somewhere at the bottom of the map. We're not going to completely get rid of it. We can't really do that because we are using other people's work on our map, so we definitely need to retain that attribution. But you have an option where you could actually move all of this attribution information right over here to the bottom of the page, and you can simply do that by heading over to dynamic text, and under layout you can select service layer credits, and I can add that information right around here. And now you can see that the information actually moved from this map to this text box right over here. So what I could do is I could head over to this text symbol and, well, decrease the font size to be about 8 and the font color to be something like this. Apply. And once you're done with all the little tweaks, to export this map to a PDF or a JPEG, what you can do is you can go to Share and select Export Layout. And from here you can specify the corresponding path and you can give it a name. Well, in terms of the type, you don't really have to export it just in PDF. If you want to make a JPEG, you can do that as well, or any other format that you wish to use. But in my case, what I'll be creating is a PDF. So I'm just going to retain this to be PDF, and over here in terms of the resolution, well, you could set it to be a resolution of about maybe 300 to 600 dpi, depending on your intentions of this map. And I think in my case, I'm just going to put this to be about 400 dpi. And after that, you can go ahead and select export. And that should export this to a separate PDF. And now if I go ahead and open up that file, this is how that map basically is supposed to look. And you can see that it's quite descriptive. You can immediately see what each of these different color bands are referring to. They're referring to different catchment elevation ranges, and those ranges are shown here along with the corresponding units. And when it comes to these other elements of the map, you have a very detailed description over here as well. And we do have an extent indicator over here. And along with that, right over here, you do have a data table which basically outlines some information that you would like to display about each of these different subcatchments. And at the same time, we didn't really forget to give proper attribution, because we did use some base maps from ESRI. So you can see that they basically highlighted all the entities that deserve that attribution. And with that, I'm going to wrap up this tutorial. I hope that you have a clear idea on how to just get started with any sort of a spatial data set and bring them into a proper map layout and create a professional looking map like this. I know we did cover quite a lot of steps, but if you do have any questions, you can add a comment down below and I'll explain that to you. That's not a problem at all. And if you did like the tutorial, you can always show your support by hitting that like button. And if you'd like to stay tuned for interesting tutorials like this, you can always consider subscribing to this channel as well. So I'll see you guys again with another tutorial soon.